You were promised freedom. Work when you want. Be your own boss. No office. No manager. Just you, your phone, and money flowing in. So why do so many gig workers feel more trapped than ever? And why does the system seem designed to keep it that way? Stay with me, because by the end of this story, you'll see the hidden math that turns flexibility into a cage and what it means for your future, even if you've never delivered a single meal. The gig economy isn't just rideshare drivers and food couriers. It's the designer bidding for logos at midnight, the warehouse contractor refreshing an app to see if there's a shift, the tutor, the cleaner, the handyman, the video editor, the virtual assistant, the musician on a platform taking a cut. It's a new labor world built on one idea. Slice work into tiny pieces, match those pieces instantly, and pay only for the pieces, never the person. And that's why this matters right now. Because this isn't a side trend. It's a blueprint. It's quietly teaching companies and governments what work can become: a permanent audition, a constant rating, a life lived in 5-star increments. What does that mean for your paycheck, your stability, your health insurance, your retirement, your ability to say no without fear? Here's what you're going to get if you stick with this to the end. You'll understand the 3 tricks that make gig work feel like freedom at first. You'll see the hidden expenses that swallow good hourly pay from the inside. You'll learn how ratings and algorithms replace managers and why that can be worse. And you'll hear what the next phase looks like when automation and AI collide with this model and squeeze workers even harder. But first, we need to start with a moment you might recognize. Picture a driver at 6:17 p.m. sitting in a car that smells faintly like fries. The phone pings. Accept in 8 seconds. The map flashes. The payout looks decent. The driver taps yes, because saying no too often can make the app punish you. Maybe not officially, but you feel it. Fewer offers. Worse trips. Longer waits. The driver is independent, but the independent worker is being trained like a lab mouse. Tap the button fast. Chase the next reward. Keep moving. But here's where it gets strange. Ask 10 gig workers why they started, and you'll hear the same story in different costumes. I needed flexibility. I needed quick cash. I couldn't find anything else. I wanted to escape my boss. It begins as a doorway, a lifeline, a rebellion. And for some people, it truly is. A single parent can work around childcare. A student can earn between classes. Someone between jobs can survive the gap. The problem is what happens after the doorway becomes the whole building. Because the gig economy doesn't just offer work. It sells a feeling. You're not an employee, you're a partner. You're not desperate, you're entrepreneurial. You're not struggling, you're hustling. And that language matters, because it changes what you'll tolerate. You'll accept instability if you believe it's temporary. You'll accept risk if you believe you chose it. You'll accept low pay if you believe the next month is when it really takes off. This is the dangerous part. In many gig jobs, your earnings are not a wage. They're a calculation. And you don't control the formula. The platform does. The platform can change the payout, the incentives, the bonuses, the surge rules, the visibility of your profile, the fees it takes, the kind of work you get offered, and the amount of information you're allowed to see before you accept. Imagine your boss could change your salary 10 times a day without telling you the rules. Now imagine your boss is an app that never answers questions. To understand the lie, you have to understand the hook. The first trick is the good day effect. Early on, platforms often make it feel easy. Promotions, bonuses, higher demand. You get a few great shifts, and your brain does what brains do. It builds a story. I can make this work. You feel smart. You feel free. And you're not wrong. On those days, the money can be real. But those days are also the bait that teaches you to chase. The second trick is the magic of gross pay. The app shows you what you earned before the real costs hit. If you drive, you pay fuel, maintenance, tires, oil, depreciation, insurance, maybe a car payment. If you deliver, you pay for the same wear and tear, plus the unpaid time between orders, the dead miles back from a far drop-off, the minutes spent waiting. If you freelance, you pay with time spent pitching, revising, negotiating, invoicing, and redoing work to keep a rating high. That time is real labor, and it often goes unpaid. Now the third trick, the one nobody wants to talk about. The gig economy turns uncertainty into a lifestyle. A normal job is a predictable river. Not always a big river, not always fair, but predictable. Gig work is rain. Sometimes a downpour, sometimes a drizzle, sometimes nothing. And when your income is rain, you stop planning in months. You plan in days. You live in a constant state of maybe. Maybe I'll make enough this week. Maybe demand will spike. Maybe I'll get a big client. Maybe I'll catch the surge. Maybe the algorithm will smile on me today. But here's what nobody tells you. Unpredictability is not just stressful. It is expensive. When you can't predict your income, you pay more for everything. You take worse deals. You accept high-interest credit. You skip preventative health care. You delay car maintenance until it becomes catastrophic. You can't negotiate from a calm place. The gig economy doesn't just pay you. It shapes your decisions. Let's zoom out for a second and talk about the machine behind the curtain. Traditional employment is built on supervisors, schedules, and contracts. The gig economy is built on software, ratings, and terms of service. That sounds modern and clean until you realize what it does. It creates a workplace where the rules can change instantly, where discipline is silent, and where appeals are often impossible. You can be deactivated with a generic email. No hearing, no human conversation, just gone. Imagine working for years, and one day your door key simply stops opening. That's what deactivation feels like. And it's not always because of fraud or danger. Sometimes it's a customer complaint, a false report, a misunderstanding. Sometimes it's the platform tightening standards, cutting risk, protecting itself. And because you're not an employee, the protections are thinner. This is the turning point where freedom starts to look like something else, dependence without rights. Now, some people will say, if you don't like it, quit. And that's true in theory. But the gig economy thrives on a specific type of worker, someone who can't easily quit. Someone with bills due now. Someone who needs flexible hours because life is messy. Someone locked out of traditional jobs by health, immigration status, childcare, a criminal record, or simply a bad local economy. The gig model doesn't require you to be powerless. It only requires a large pool of people who can't afford to wait. Here's a story that repeats across cities and countries. A driver starts doing rideshare part-time, then full-time because it seems to pay more than their old job. They work longer hours to hit bonuses. The platform adjusts bonuses. Competition increases. Prices fluctuate. They drive more to maintain the same income. Their car wears faster. Repairs hit. They keep driving to pay for the repairs needed to keep driving. That's not entrepreneurship. That's a treadmill with a steering wheel. What does this mean for you? Even if you're not a gig worker, this model influences the entire labor market. Because once companies see that labor can be purchased in slices, they start wondering why they should pay for the whole loaf. Why pay benefits? Why offer stability? Why build careers? The gig economy doesn't just change how some people work. It changes what employers think work is. And the platforms are brilliant at making this feel voluntary. The app doesn't force you to log in. It nudges you. It tempts you. It uses psychology like a casino uses lights. You're $12 away from your goal. High demand nearby. Complete 3 more trips for a bonus. These are not neutral messages. They're behavioral design. They're the same tools used to keep people scrolling, clicking, and chasing. Except here, the commodity isn't attention. It's your time, your labor, your body. But here's where it gets even darker. In the gig economy, you are both the worker and the product. Your labor serves the customer. Your data serves the platform. Your location, your behavior, your acceptance rate, your response time, your customer ratings, your routes, your patterns. This becomes a surveillance-based management system. In an office, a manager can watch you. In gig work, the system watches everyone, always, and turns that observation into control. People talk about being your own boss, but ask yourself, can your boss cut your pay without notice? Can your boss decide you no longer exist? Can your boss change the rules so you're competing with twice as many people tomorrow? Can your boss require you to maintain a near-perfect rating to keep access to work? Because in many gig platforms, the answer is yes. And that's the paradox. The less human the management, the less negotiable it becomes. Now let's talk about ratings, the most polite weapon ever invented. Ratings look democratic. Customers evaluate service. Workers get rewarded for quality. But ratings are also a way to outsource discipline to the crowd. You can do everything right and still get a bad rating because someone is in a bad mood. because traffic existed, because a restaurant was late, because a client expected miracles for cheap. And if your livelihood depends on staying above a threshold, you learn a new form of fear, pleasing strangers at any cost. This is why gig work can feel emotionally brutal. In a normal job, your boss might be unfair, but at least you know who they are. In gig work, your boss is the average of anonymous opinions and silent calculations. You can't build trust with an algorithm. You can't explain yourself to a number. And you can't bargain with a 5-star system that treats a 4.7 like a failure. But here's what nobody tells you. Ratings don't just measure performance. They shape it. They push workers to absorb costs to keep customers happy. Drivers offer free extras. Couriers race in unsafe conditions. Freelancers do unpaid revisions. People tolerate harassment. People accept unreasonable demands. And the platform benefits because quality improves without the platform paying for it. The worker pays through time, stress, and sometimes safety. Now, to be fair, there's another side to this. Some people truly thrive in gig work. A skilled freelancer can find global clients and earn more than they ever could locally. A driver who uses the app strategically can make solid money during peak events. A creative person can turn a platform into a portfolio. Flexibility can be life-changing. The lie isn't that gig work can never work. The lie is that the system is designed for your freedom first. Most of the time, it's designed for the platform's flexibility first. And that brings us to classification, the legal magic trick at the heart of the gig economy. Employee status usually comes with minimum wage protections, overtime rules, unemployment insurance, workers' compensation, and sometimes healthcare benefits. Independent contractor status usually does not. So the biggest financial hack a platform can pull is shifting risk from company to worker while keeping control through software. It's like having a referee who claims they're not part of the game. This is where the arguments get fierce. Platforms say, we're just technology. We connect people. Workers say, you set the prices, you set the rules, you can remove us. How is that not employment? Governments struggle because the old categories weren't designed for app-managed labor at scale. Some places try to force employee classification. Others create new third categories. Some platforms threaten to leave markets. Some negotiate compromises. And while the debate rages, millions of workers live in the gap. But here's the turning point. The gig economy's greatest strength, its flexibility, is also its greatest cover. Because when rules are flexible, accountability becomes slippery. Who is responsible for safety training? For insurance? For discrimination? For harassment? For injuries? For income stability? Everyone points somewhere else. The platform says it's a marketplace. The customer says they're just ordering. The worker is left holding the consequences. Let's talk about the numbers in a way you can feel. Say you see an offer that looks like $25 an hour. Now subtract unpaid time between tasks. Subtract the cost of fuel, equipment, software subscriptions, vehicle wear, phone plans. Subtract taxes you're now responsible for. Subtract the time you spend finding work, messaging clients, dealing with disputes. Subtract the slow weeks. Suddenly, $25 an hour becomes something closer to survival, and sometimes less than local minimum wage equivalents depending on conditions. This is why people can work more and feel poorer. What happens to your savings, your job, your life if this continues? Because that's the real question. A stable society depends on predictable incomes. Rent and mortgages don't accept low demand today. Kids don't eat, maybe next week. And when a large chunk of workers live in income volatility, the entire economy becomes more fragile. People postpone families. People delay education. People avoid medical care. Communities hollow out. Now here comes the part that makes people angry. The gig economy is often sold as opportunity, but it can function like a pressure valve for inequality. When wages stagnate and costs rise, gig work becomes the patch people use to cover holes in the boat. It doesn't fix the boat. It keeps it afloat long enough for the leak to get worse. Side hustles become required hustles. And when everyone is hustling, the power to say, pay me more disappears. But here's what nobody tells you. Competition in gig platforms is not just competition with other workers in your city. It's competition with the system itself. Platforms can adjust supply by onboarding more workers. They can lower payouts because someone, somewhere, will accept. They can test new pay models silently. They can AI/B test your livelihood like a website tests button colors. When workers are isolated and atomized, it's hard to resist. You're not in a break room comparing notes. You're alone in your car, refreshing a screen. So what about unions and collective power? That's the natural immune system of labor. But gig platforms are built to make collective action harder. Workers are distributed, schedules differ, turnover is high, and classification can limit organizing rights. Yet, in many places, gig workers have found ways to coordinate. Online groups, coordinated log-offs, legal challenges, protests, new kinds of associations. And every time workers do this, it reveals something important. The model depends on workers being individual entrepreneurs in name, but not in reality. Now, let's talk about the customer's role, because it's uncomfortable. The gig economy makes consumption feel weightless. Tap a button, a meal appears. Tap again, a car arrives. Tap again, a person across the world designs your logo overnight. It feels like magic. But the magic has a human cost. Someone waits in a parking lot. Someone eats the risk of a late restaurant. Someone pays for the canceled order. Someone accepts a low rate to win the gig. Convenience is never free. It just hides the invoice. This is the moment where people say, okay, but what's the alternative? And that's fair. Not everyone can jump into a salaried career. Not every city has good jobs. Not every person can work a fixed schedule. Gig work can be a bridge. The problem is when the bridge becomes the destination, and the destination is a world where most workers live without a floor. Because without a floor, you don't negotiate. You scramble, and scrambling is profitable for platforms. If workers are desperate, they accept worse terms. If customers are trained to expect instant cheap service, they resist higher prices. And the platform sits between them, taking a cut, optimizing the flow, and ensuring the blame goes in every direction except up. But here's where it gets truly futuristic and truly frightening. The next phase of the gig economy isn't just more gig work. It's automated gig work. Self-driving vehicles may reduce driving opportunities. Delivery robots and drones may cut courier demand. AI tools may flood freelance marketplaces with cheaper, faster competition for writing, design, code, translation, voiceover, even music. The same platforms that broke work into pieces are now feeding those pieces into machines. What does that mean for you? It means the gig economy may become the training ground for your replacement. Platforms learn workflows, optimize tasks, standardize output, and once the task is standardized enough, it becomes automatable. Humans are used where the world is messy, stairs, weather, emotions, unpredictable clients. But every year, the messy parts shrink. And the workers who built the platform's value may be the first squeezed out. This is the dangerous part. When technology reduces labor demand, companies can say, just pivot, just learn new skills. But if the entire system is built on unstable income, how do you learn? Who pays you while you train? Who covers rent while you upskill? The gig economy tells you to be flexible, but flexibility without support is just vulnerability. So are we doomed? No. But the answer isn't a motivational quote. It's structure. The gig economy can be made less predatory, but only if rules catch up to reality. Minimum earnings standards that account for expenses, transparent pay formulas, real appeals and due process for deactivation, limits on unilateral changes, portable benefits that follow workers across platforms, stronger protections against retaliation, and yes, new models of collective bargaining that fit digital work. None of this is impossible. It's political and economic will. And on the personal level, there are ways to survive the system without letting it swallow you. Treat gig work like a business, not a promise. Track net earnings, not gross. Calculate your real hourly after expenses and unpaid time. Build an emergency buffer, even if it's small. Diversify platforms so one deactivation doesn't erase you overnight. Learn the patterns of demand in your area. Set boundaries with clients. Protect your body. Protect your vehicle. Protect your mind. Because the platform will not protect those things for you. But here's what nobody tells you. The most valuable skill in the gig economy is the ability to say no. No to unprofitable orders. No to clients who drain you. No to unsafe situations. No to the trap of working more hours just to stay still. And the tragedy is that the people who most need gig work often have the least ability to say no. That's why the conversation can't just be work smarter. It has to be build a floor. Now let's pull all the threads together, because this is the climax where the whole picture sharpens. The gig economy offers freedom in time, but often steals freedom in money. It offers independence in name, but builds dependence through opaque algorithms. It offers opportunity, but shifts risk onto individuals and calls it entrepreneurship. It turns customers into managers, ratings into discipline, and uncertainty into normal life. And it spreads this model outward, teaching the wider economy that labor can be on-demand, disposable, and endlessly adjustable. Here's the perfect storm: rising living costs, stagnant wages, shrinking benefits, and a technology layer that can coordinate millions of workers without employing them. Add a culture that glamorizes hustle, and you get a society where people work more hours with fewer guarantees, while being told they're lucky to have flexibility. So what does the gig economy lie? It's not that flexibility is fake. It's that flexibility is incomplete. Real freedom isn't just choosing your hours. Real freedom is knowing your rent will be paid. Real freedom is having healthcare when you get sick. Real freedom is being able to refuse bad work without losing everything. If the system gives you schedule freedom but keeps you financially cornered, that's not freedom. That's a softer kind of control. And this is where the story becomes yours. Because the next time you open an app to order something instantly, you'll feel the hidden machinery behind the convenience. The next time you hear "be your own boss," you'll ask, who sets the price? Who can fire me? Who changes the rules? And the next time someone tells you the future of work is gig work, you'll know the real question isn't whether it's efficient. The question is, efficient for whom? If this opened your eyes, don't let the conversation end here. Talk about it. Share your experience. Ask harder questions. And if you want more stories that expose the systems shaping your money, your security, and your future, subscribe, because this story isn't over yet, and the next chapter is already being written on your phone screen.